Hello and welcome to Agents of Nonprofit. My name is Alexander Lapa, and I'm here to speak with everyday superheroes helping nonprofits. Joining me today is Eric Osuorah to talk about artisanal marketplaces. I'm never going to say that word correctly, artisanal, but I'll do my best. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
So for people hearing you for the very first time, could you share your superhero origin story?
Sure. Hello, everyone. As Alex pointed out, my name is Eric Osuorah. I'm originally from Nigeria. I am based in the city of Brampton here in Canada. I moved to this wonderful country about 20 years ago. I have a background in engineering and digital transformation. I've been in this space for close to 2 decades. I come from a large family of 4 brothers and 2 sisters. My parents are big on big on philanthropy. My mom is obviously past about 10 years now, and my dad is still kicking strong. But we were brought up with the spirit of helping, being in philanthropy. And that's what I've carried along in my life. And, I've been very blessed to connect with people, especially in the non-profit sector predominantly. And, I'm very pleased to be doing what I do today because it's been very rewarding for me. And that's pretty much my story. And I'm sure over the course of our conversations, there's a lot that will be said about where my background and what I tend to do overall.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the intro. So I'm curious then, the topic is artisanal marketplaces. So maybe you could give us and the listeners a definition of what are we talking about when we say artisanal marketplace?
Yeah. So an artisanal marketplace is a marketplace for artisans. Artisans are makers, creators within the handicraft sector. So we've used the word artisanal. Some people you might find some marketplaces called handmade marketplace or handicraft marketplace, right, as well. So the word artisanal is just an extension of the word artisan. As I pointed out, are talented, wonderful small business owners who actually make their craft by hand. That's pretty much what the term signifies when we say artisanal marketplace.
So we're talking about physical items here, not digital ones.
We are talking about physical. Well, it also revolves around digital because it's all about artisans. Could include artists as well, who also who paint or create digital works of art as well. Okay. So that range includes digital products as well.
Okay. And then when we talk about marketplace, most people, I think, hopefully think of an Etsy. I mean, there's also Facebook Marketplace too, but I'm not quite sure is a full marketplace. I guess it is a type of marketplace. I mean, it's called marketplace. But to me, when I think of marketplace, I think of, to your point, people who are building something and then selling it through that channel, as opposed to, let's say, Facebook Marketplace, which is more taking something I bought already and now I'm reselling it as a secondhand item. I guess marketplace, maybe a definition would be appropriate here. So what is a marketplace exactly to you?
Absolutely. So a marketplace is pretty much in our case, an online platform where it's a two-sided platform. When I say two-sided, means you have the sellers and then you have the buyers, right? So imagine a physical marketplace where sellers actually go there, they have their physical shops, and then people actually go out to these physical markets to actually buy their goods. A marketplace now in that term is the same thing, but now we're now bringing that more in the digital side of things. So it's now online. So that's when you hear the term marketplace, that's really what it signifies, where we're talking about a two-sided platform where you have sellers, buyers now coming together to interact and conduct business.
So in that general concept, just a marketplace by itself, the product itself could be virtually anything, to your point, right? It doesn't need to be something I've made myself. It could be something that I've owned for years. It's a family heirloom or whatnot, and I'm just selling it. And by virtue of that, I can go to a marketplace to sell it.
Absolutely. Now, it depends on the premise of the marketplace on the specific marketplace that you're looking at selling. For example, Facebook Marketplace aligns with what you just described, where, look, I had this old product in my home. I don't need it anymore. I want to get some money back. I can go on Facebook Marketplace and put it up for sale. When you look at Etsy, for example, Etsy is predominantly or the de facto platform for handicraft, right? So handmade products. That's where you now tend to now see artisans or people who make handicraft or craft now go on the Etsy platform to say, hey, I made this handmade product. And now sellers who are craft lovers or enthusiasts now come out to those platforms to see something that appeals to them. And then they make a purchase on that marketplace.
Okay. There's also this concept I know of centralized and decentralized marketplaces. Maybe you could offer a definition of that as well.
Sure. So when we look at, let's start off with a centralized marketplace. So a centralized marketplace is really a platform where its owners, right, set out rules. They manage anything that has to do with policies and fees, and they are not always beneficial to sellers in terms of where they are not very they choose not to be transparent, right? They manage, they control pretty much everything that happens on the marketplace. The sellers don't really have a say. The buyers don't really have a say. It's totally a top-down approach where everything they say is, look, we control what's happening in here. So when you start looking at platforms like Etsy, for example, where you have reward points and all whatnot, they could decide tomorrow to say, we ban you for specific reasons. They can choose to tell you the reason why they're banning the seller, or they can choose not to. And then, for example, you've accumulated all of these points, you lose all of that as well, because the ecosystem you're in, they've locked you in. There is no diversity when it comes to what you can do with your rewards, for example, right? And platforms like that, they can choose to also increase their pricing. And that's why you tend to see a lot of artisans today, at least the ones we communicate with, tend to always come back to say, look, they can't afford platforms like the Etsy's and all of these other marketplaces for handmade products as well, because then you tend to see a lot of control coming from from the owners of this platform. Now, when you look at a decentralized model, that means control is designed to be distributed among its users. So for customers and the artisans now have a say in the direction maybe the platform is designed to go, right? And on top of that, then you want to also look at the technology that's involved to drive that decentralization. And that's where Web3 technology, blockchain technology now comes into play, right? Because at the end of the day, if you truly want to lead a progressive decentralized model, you want to be able to show transparency that, hey, this artisan or this customer had a say in the way the ecosystem is designed to evolve over time. And decentralized marketplaces, because it's more of some sort of like a collective approach per se, you tend to also see that bit of lower fees, more controls from the users, and that then the owners of the platform don't exact so much control, so that you tend to see more greater autonomy in that approach, right? So those are the differences between the centralized and decentralized model, and that's why you tend to see the Amazons, the Etsy's. These companies have grown significantly in revenue, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the model that they chose. But the problem with that model is when you become very profit focused at the end of the day, then a lot of people are either cut off. You don't have the interest to bring in people like in my home country of Nigeria. A lot of people can't afford to be on those kind of platforms, right? Because they're very profit driven. And they have all these barriers in place that do not allow them to evolve to become a decentralized model. And then a lot of people are left behind, and you lack inclusion at the end of the day. You lack equity at the end of the day as well. So that's the difference between these two models.
A lot of great information there. And the sense I'm getting is tying it back to a real market, a real physical market that you would go to yourself. That is more of a decentralized model, right? Like that is aligned more with not a single person or entity controlling the market. You could, you can decide to go to the market, sell your wares, and it's up to the market to decide whether it will be purchased or not. Versus Etsy or Amazon or Facebook, you have to agree, like you said, to their terms and conditions. They set the rules. You have to either agree with it or not be on the platform. You have to abide by their fees. So that centralized model is really, I I get the impression at least, it was introduced as part of the digital economy, but it's not. It is a one step removed from how we used to do things in the past before the internet age, and
Absolutely.
therefore there are some benefits. I mean, I'll phrase it as a question, but is there a reason other than not even a reason? I know that there's a growing trend for more decentralized everything. Like that's just Web 3.0, and marketplaces is heading in that direction. Do you think maybe the return to that decentralized market is because it's the way we used to do things? Are there other factors? Is it just that fact that users, buyers and sellers are getting tired of the controls, the lack of autonomy, and the fees? Like, what's the motivating factor, I guess, for going for a more decentralized platform?
Well, there are multiple factors. One is the economy in that specific region. For example, here in Canada, we know that on paper the economy seems to be doing okay, but the people are feeling the pinch. People can't afford to have disposable income as they used to. I've spoken with a number of artisans who used to run their business full time for decades. Like I know artisans that have been running their business for 20 years. And because times are hard now, disposable income has reduced. They've turned their business to do something more part-time, right? So people are now looking for the opportunity for platforms that can allow them to plug in, but also not break the bank, right? That's one aspect of it. And the other aspect is people want to have control. They want to have control. In the world today where how the internet has evolved, how a lot of these major internet service providers that we have, from the Googles and the Microsofts and all these other big platforms and Facebooks and all whatnot, they now benefit more from people's data, or in the sense of where they are tracking everybody, what everybody's doing. They are tracking our behavior when we're surfing the internet, and the data, they process that data to now benefit and sell to advertisers or marketers. And at the end of the day, they recoup money, and we don't get anything out of it, and they benefit. Right? So people want to start seeing a bit of control where they say, look, I own my data, I own my sales, right? Fewer restrictions and all whatnot. Then transparency, where platforms like Etsy today, I mean, there are complaints, you see a lot of videos posted on social media, people waking up to say, Etsy banned me today, and nobody has told me why I was banned. In some cases where Etsy maybe, for example, pointed out, this is why you did this, and they want to engage in, okay, what can I do better? They cut you off, right? We've seen some of these things at the end of the day, right? And then, I think it then comes down to the fact that the dynamics of the generation that's coming after us, the Gen Zs, I think they want a fairer world. That's the what I see, at least with my kids and their friends, and we see what's happening across the globe today in terms of the Gen Z speaking up for fairness. So I think that we now tend to see more of this decentralized model coming in to address some of these issues, providing equity, fairness, lower transaction fees so that people can afford, cutting off middlemen, people having control over their own data, what they can do. Just as you rightly pointed out, it's similar to the concept of having your own physical store in somewhere, because you control that store. Maybe you're paying the rent to someone, but at least you say you set your own prices, you dictate what's happening at your store at the end of the day. But the question is, how many people can afford that today in the world today, right? Have only in their physical stores, especially when you want to go in a very high traffic area, stores like that don't come cheap as well. So that's when we start to see the direction towards decentralization, because it favors more people who are from low income countries, for example, right, that are looking to to benefit in platforms that adopt this model, so that they don't also break the bank because of all of the benefits that it has to offer.
I'm hearing quite a few positives about a decentralized marketplace. I'm curious if you could share a few negatives about it, because the one that would come to mind when I think about it is when it's centralized, you do have a organization that sets certain rules, and sometimes those rules are needed because we know not everyone wants to play by the rules, and therefore by just having rules to begin with, then you have to abide by them. So there's certain things that either are illegal or immoral or questionable morality, might not appear on these things because they have rules against it. But if you have a decentralized model, how do can you or should you, have these kinds of restrictions in place? And if you can, how do you actually do that?
That's a great question. And I tend to get a lot of people ask the same question. For example, our platform, the Informal Marketplace, we are adopting a decentralized model. Okay. At the beginning, because we are the founders of this company, right? We all now have we're adopting this progressive approach towards decentralization. We all come out as a team and we make those rules. Now, here is how things start to evolve. When we start adopting Web3 blockchain technology, we start getting to build, or we start building our community within the Informal Marketplace, leveraging these technologies. For example, we have our token, our utility token that is part of that ecosystem. As you actively engage in growing the ecosystem or making the marketplace sustainable and profitable, we are issuing you those tokens, right? Those utility tokens. Now, what does that do? I'm going to look at it from a governance perspective. There are a number of utilities that the Informal token will do for us, but let's focus now on what you talked about when it comes to governance. We've started on our platform today. If you go on the platform today, you're going to see our terms and conditions. This was built by us. Over time, as the company starts to evolve and we start to grow, we are going to also have people like our artisans also be part of that decision-making process. And how does that work? We will put out proposals. They can put out proposals. And then at that point in time, you can take your Web3 wallet and make a vote. So it's almost like where we say, look, we want all these rules because this is the reason why these rules have to be in place, right? So the goal for us at the end of the day is where then everybody can then come in and have a voice, right? So on day one, it's always going to take the approach of from a progressive standpoint. And I agree with you. People don't want chaos. People want to see control, right? But at the same time, I think if everybody within that community, right, has the same goals, the same objectives, right? They have a shared mission, right? They want to succeed. We want them to succeed. We as a platform, as an organization want to succeed. I think everybody's interest would be where we all collectively come together to make that choice, right? So at the end of the day, as much as people might see decentralization as leading to chaos, it could also lead to making the right choices and growing making the organization work for everybody at the end of the day. Because then you eliminate all of that unfairness, you eliminate the issues of lack of inclusion and equity. So there will always be some measure of control, but it will be happening as a collective, as a group, as a community. Now, there will always be challenges with this model. And let's talk about these challenges. One of them will be because of the technology itself, right? It is still a very new concept to a lot of people, right? It is still a very new concept to a lot of people. And a lot of people at the very beginning might find it's not user-friendly. But, over time, if we can find a way to drive the adoption of the technology to real-world use cases, then people tend to start understanding it. The problem with Web3 today is a lot of the technology is not applied to real world to solve real world issues. If you get a $10 Canadian, if you get $10, right? you know what you want to do with that $10, right? If you tell somebody here is a Web3 wallet, they're going to go, what am I going to do with this, right? But if you start to create use cases where these Web3 wallets, your token and all whatnot, can provide value to the individual and to the populace overall, then they start to appreciate, okay, I get it. I get it. Now I understand its true purpose, right? And I understand why this technology is important to us, right? So these are the real challenges that people will face at the beginning, because it's not a concept that they are used to. But I think over time, with the right adoption, with the right approach, you tend to see, they will start to appreciate the benefits of this technology and have a proper understanding of it. But in saying that, we as innovators, we have to also make sure that the technology, the model, the concept is made in a way that every human being can have an understanding, make the approach seamless. I'll give you a typical example. When we were piloting their former marketplace a year and a half ago, we did not introduce the Web3 component to it. And one of the things that kept coming into our mind was, how do we adopt people into Web3 seamlessly? Because what we were involved, we would have told people, oh, go to this platform, download this app, download this Web3 wallet. You do this, you save your wallet address, you do all of this stuff. People start to go, oh, I don't get it. It is too complex. So for us, what we've now done is, the minute you come into the platform, you register as a seller or a customer, you're automatically onboarded into Web3. You have your wallet already there. Then for us, what we now need to do is, now we've onboarded them seamlessly, the education piece now starts to come in. And we also start to introduce the use case and the utility of the Web3 wallet and the token as well, right? And then introduce the governance piece of it. As we start to see and adopt this method of operation, then the appreciation for what we're doing will be recognized 100%.
I definitely want to talk about the technology, but just a bit later on. Before we get there, talking about the collective, and it sounds to me that because someone builds a marketplace, right? The decentralized marketplace, it sounds like they set the theme of that marketplace. Now, this is a marketplace that we're trying to build for people to do and sell these kinds of things, right? They can kind of set the initial parameters of the marketplace. And then to your point, as people come and join, then they can start voting. But the intention is, there's a theme to it. There's always going to be, and you could create multiple marketplaces. You could have one that's a completely different theme. Like if you do want to have those morally questionable things, that's great, I guess. Mm-hmm. But you would probably start that from the beginning, saying this is going to be that kind of site, and it'll track those kinds of people. So when they're voting, you said, we all have the same interests. It's because there's already that theme, or that, and I guess I'll keep the word theme. That theme has been set from the beginning, so that it'll grow and evolve based on the people that are participating. But they already know where is the starting point. Would that be a good assessment of what you were saying?
Absolutely. Okay. I don't think on day one, even us on day one, we cannot be fully decentralized. There's a lot more work that has to be put into it. But the goal is to start planning towards a progressive decentralization, until, as we evolve, then we can become fully decentralized, right? But on day one, you just can't start. I started this company, I'm one person, right? I bring in the next person, I bring in the next co-founder, and I start building my team. A lot of that decision is still going to be made by us, right? The company. The minute we start bringing in other people, we start going, okay, we've gotten one artisan, two artisans, 3, 4. Oh, by the way, we now have 10 customers. Now we have 20 artisans, 50. We start to change the rules, the policies, to make sure everybody has a buy-in. A lot of people might not be comfortable or have an understanding of the model, but those that do have an understanding become part of that decision-making that now allows us to start to evolve into that decentralized model. Now, this is just from a governance perspective. Then when we now start looking at the technology stack that allows us to do that, that's still further down the road. So there's still a long way for us to achieve a fully decentralized marketplace in its sense.
You talked about the startup and the progression and the evolution of it. So I'm curious, is this a model that anyone, anywhere could start? And if so, what does that look like? Like, what does day one look like for someone starting or intending to start a decentralized marketplace? And what would you say are the major milestones before, in your opinion, it gets to a fully, whatever that means, fully decentralized model?
So anybody could start a decentralized marketplace. We are not the first marketplace that is adopting this model or moving towards a decentralized model, but we are the first when it comes to the handicraft sector, right? So anybody can adopt this. In saying that, though, they have to have a technical know-how of creating or have an idea of what a decentralized marketplace will look like, especially within that Web3 blockchain space, right? You have to also look at developers who are working to create user-friendly tools that would make it easier for creators or artisans to partake in that decentralized marketplace. And that's when, if you recall, when I said we had to build our marketplace now to be easy, user-friendly, and seamless. The minute you register on the platform, you automatically get onboarded into that Web3 space, right? You get your Web3 wallet, right? So at the end of the day, we don't need the artisans or our customers to have a very deep technical skill at this point in time, right? Because we've bridged that gap for them, right? So anybody that's within that space, that's the type of thinking that you need to have in order for you to start building a decentralized marketplace. And there's a lot more depending on what technologies you are looking at adopting specifically, right? But the goal at the end of the day is it's important for you to have a solid understanding of both the technology and, most importantly, community building.
Okay, so if anyone can start a decentralized marketplace, the first thought I had was like when it came to cryptocurrency, everyone was able to start their own version of Bitcoin and they get all these, millions or I don't know how many, but way too many cryptocurrencies, right? Some of them
Yes.
you've never even heard of, some of them are penny stocks, some of them are popular like Bitcoin and Ether and stuff like that. So if anyone can do it, what is how do you distinguish yourself? How do you separate yourself from the rest of the people? Is there a value proposition? Is it just based on popularity? Will the market ultimately decide which one ends up being popular because of your positioning or your marketing? Like how is that regulated, or how is that not even regulated, but how is that? Yeah, how do you again, I'm
Differentiate
struggling
us
for
from others, right?
exactly. There you go.
So that's a good question, and it is a very valid question. What we tend to see a lot is a lot of people have created cryptocurrencies and tokens and all whatnot. What you want to do is every cryptocurrency or every token created in that blockchain space ideally should have a project associated with it, right? It should have a project associated with it. So, but what we tend to see are people who then go to create cryptocurrencies just because of greed and they want to make money. So, how you should differentiate cryptocurrencies or between the cryptocurrencies is you want to see the utility. What is the utility behind that cryptocurrency or the token itself? That's one, right? What are the tokenomics? So how is the distribution of the token supposed to happen so that you can start to have an understanding of, is this token driven to enrich the makers or the founders or the creators? Or is it really to help drive decentralization, to build for community building? Everybody wins at the end of the day, right? In our case, our token was designed because we wanted to adopt a decentralized model. And we felt we needed to create a utility token. And if you notice, I keep using the word a utility token. We are not a cryptocurrency. A cryptocurrency would be like Bitcoin, right? For us, we are a utility token. Well, what that means is we're creating a token that drives or provides a utility within our marketplace. So our token will be used to do different things and create different objectives or goals that we want to meet, right? So the differentiating factor, because anybody can wake up and say, I want to create a cryptocurrency, I want to create my own token, I want to create my own coin, right? Anybody can wake up and do that. But the goal is, as users or people out there looking outward and in, we want to look at, okay, you created this token or this cryptocurrency. What is its use case? What utility does it bring? What value does it create? Because you use the right word. What is its value proposition? What does it have to do, right? So for us, our token is driven to provide utility. There are so many factors of what we intend to use our token to achieve, but the goal overall is to create the marketplace to be sustainable, reduce our operational costs, because now we can now use the token to incentivize different people or people that have a shared goal, so that people are all contributing at the end of the day, right? So that's where you want to definitely look at and say, what is this token or this crypto or this coin designed to do? There are thousands of coins or cryptocurrencies out there that have no value, right? A bunch of people came together and said, let's create our coin. They raised money through it, and then they just took off, right? So you have to definitely look at the project as associated with those coins, do some bit of research behind the project itself or the token itself and its users before you can now really say, look, this is something that that makes sense, that works for us, or that you can actually trust.
Part of my question was just drawing the parallels between the cryptocurrency and the marketplace, not necessarily the cryptocurrency itself. The idea is that if anyone can start a decentralized marketplace, how do you separate your marketplace from any other marketplace? And I think you've kind of touched upon that. The idea is that there has to be a value behind it, and hopefully it's a genuine value, because obviously if people are really focused on greed, they can fake part of that. So that's the part that I was asking, was more, how do you distinguish as a potential buyer which marketplace you want to go to? Because even though this marketplace says that they're genuine and they're honest and there might be more greed behind that message, like there was with the cryptocurrency.
And you're right. And it's just like the same thing. We have so many e-commerce platforms today, right? We have a lot of e-commerce platforms. It now comes to, what is the value proposition that the e-commerce platform offers to its users? For us, we are a two-sided marketplace, which is what a marketplace really is, right? What is my value proposition to our sellers? What is my value proposition to our customers, right? So we have to now look at, as much as we're adopting a decentralized model, what is the value that this decentralized model, what value does it really create at the end of the day? Is it a model that really drives inclusion, equity, fairness, governance, or is it just some marketplace that you can come and sell different type of goods? How do you really drive your how do you drive your decentralized model? How does it work for your community, right? So at the end of the day, these are the points that you want to look at that drives the difference between us and other platforms that exist today. Right now, we are the only platform, for example, within the handicraft space, looking at leveraging a decentralized model in the future, right? Another marketplace tomorrow can wake up and say, look, we want to do the same thing. So the difference here is, how are we adopting? What technology stack are we using? What technology are we looking at to drive that decentralized model? Are we using tokens? Yes. Okay. What is your token designed to do? What is the utility it's designed to provide? What value proposition is it supposed to give to its community at the end of the day? That is where the striking difference comes in between our decentralized marketplace and its model and the next thing that might be coming in the future.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I was thinking of as well. So let's jump into the tech, because tech to me obviously is great. Let's not get too technical, because I don't want to lose too many listeners, but you mentioned a few words of blockchain, Web3, tokens. So I imagine all of these things are necessary to be able to create a decentralized marketplace. Are there any other factors, or like, I don't want to really talk about the ground, like the low level technology part, but just general concepts of what technology is being used to create this marketplace and how is it being used?
Sure. So, in simple terms, our marketplace is leveraging the same stack, or I wouldn't say exact like for like, but it's an e-commerce platform, right? That's the first piece the audience needs to understand. Where we become different is when we talk about decentralization at the end of the day, and what technology are we using to achieve that. So to drive decentralization, one of the things that we are doing is to make sure that we are leveraging Web3. And the core factors of Web3 is about providing decentralization, ownership, and security, right? That's the factor that Web3 technology really offers. That's the core value of technology of Web3. Then you have to also look at what blockchain technology is. And in simple terms, imagine blockchain to just be a digital ledger where records of information are stored within this ledger that cannot be changed or tampered with. So how does this work? Imagine where artisans and our users come to vote towards a proposal. Every time you connect your Web3 wallet and you put in your vote towards how certain things should be done, that vote is recorded within the blockchain. And it cannot be altered, it cannot be modified, and it's fully transparent to all, right? So if tomorrow someone wants to look at our stack and say, how transparent is the former marketplace, for example, they can see some of the transactions we've done with our tokens, for example, within the blockchain network. And then they can start seeing some of these transactions happening. And then they can, if they want to drill deeper, they can now drill deep to actually say, okay, we're seeing some decision-making happening here, which is all part of that whole decentralization that we talk about. So the technology that really revolves around making us what we are is we're definitely looking at soft, obviously, the right coding, programming languages that allows us to interface with Web3 technology. We are using a utility token that exists within or created within a blockchain network. We are leveraging what they call non-custodial wallets. These are Web3 wallets where you, myself, and everybody that partakes within our ecosystem will have control over their own wallets. It's not where you have a custodial wallet where it's almost like you go to a bank and the bank gives you a wallet that they have control over. Now you dictate how you want to run your own wallet. You control your own private keys and all whatnot. So from a technology stack, that's really what makes our platform tick or function from that perspective.
And I really appreciate that you, as in your particular marketplace, you're doing your best to hide all of the technology from the end user because, I mean, not everyone will be able to follow what you just said, for example, and might be intimidated by it. But at least, for me, at least as a technologist, I love the understanding the behind the curtain type stuff. But for people who just want to use the platform, it sounds like there are mechanisms that you can put in place to make all of the technology irrelevant, really, to the user. They just need to use it and understand how to use it. And it's just a new process for them as opposed to understanding, okay, first you need to do this and here's how this works and here first you need to get that and then that's not how that works. So I really appreciate the fact that you've made it simpler because I think that will benefit the end user, of course.
100%. And that's exactly it. No, a lot of people won't understand the concept of, I have to go get myself a Web3 wallet. And then every time I carry out a transaction within the platform and I want to be rewarded or incentivized for it, I have to now start figuring out, okay, I have to go get my wallet. How do I go about that, setting that all up? On our platform, that's all built out in a way where it is now transparent to the user. They just register, they already have their wallet. So anytime they contribute towards that ecosystem, then we incentivize them. Now it's on us now to now start educating them, because there's always going to be education around new technology like this at the end of the day.
That's exactly what I was thinking about next, is that there is an education piece because it's new. People just have to learn a new way to do things. There is an incentive to do it that we've talked about earlier. So I'm curious then, if you had a crystal ball, if you could predict the future a little bit, do you see this decentralized model completely taking over the centralized model? Or is there going to be a certain balance? Like I imagine, and I'm off the top of my head, maybe 95% of all marketplaces today are centralized, 5% are decentralized. Do you see that flipping? Or what percentages would you put, or what's your future predictions overall?
Well, I wouldn't say centralization will be completely overtaken by decentralization. I don't see that, at least maybe not in my lifetime. But I do see a growth towards decentralization, 100%, because the technology in itself to get towards decentralization, there's a lot of work that still has to go into it. Because when you start looking at different blockchain networks that are leveraging different protocols, for example, a lot of these blockchain networks are still not built to even interact with each other. So setting tokens or coins or cryptocurrencies will work on certain blockchain networks, and yet it won't work on others, right? So there's still a lot of work to make all of that happen. That's one. Two, there's still a lot of there's still a need for adoption of this technology towards real world use cases. And I think, as I pointed out before, once that starts to happen, people tend to start appreciating. So until we start to see a lot of these technologies applied towards real world use cases, then we start to also see that drive towards decentralization as well, right? So until we start to see some of these changes, and on top of that, regulation, it's key. We have to see government regulations on when it comes to these technologies being used to achieve decentralization, right? Especially when we talk about cryptos and all whatnot. We have to get the government to buy into this to drive innovation, right? But I understand when you look at the government, they go, we don't want people to unplug. We want to still exert some control here. So I can see where the challenge exists for some of them to actually say, what can we do here to actually drive regulation? But it's now we're beginning to see some governments now really saying, look, something needs to be done. And we need to start talking about it. So until we start to see regulations come in, adoption of these technologies towards solving real world use cases, the education of it, the technology being used by innovators or founders like ourselves in platforms like the Informal Marketplace, then we can start to see a shift. But within my lifetime, I don't see decentralization completely overtaking centralization. And the reason why is because centralization is easy. It's just easy. People just want people to you take control of this. I don't have time to deal with figuring things on my own, right? People just love that. But as long as we start to build decentralization models to become easier, to become user-friendly, then we're going to start seeing a massive shift towards that. But maybe I might be wrong. 10 years from now, we'll see. We'll see, Alex.
Eric, this has been great. Lots of information. I'm sure people will have follow-up. If you could share, how can people get in touch with you? And what is the name again of your marketplace, so that if buyers or sellers actually want to use your artisanal marketplace, they can do so?
Sure. You can find me on LinkedIn, Eric Osuorah. So Osuorah, and Eric is ERIC. You'll find me on LinkedIn. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Afoma Marketplace. Afoma is AFOMA and Marketplace. Actually, Afoma means goodwill in my native tongue of Igbo. I'm from the Igbo tribe from Nigeria. So Afoma means goodwill. So if you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can visit our website, afomamarketplace.com, and we would love you to be part of our community and support some of these small business owners that are looking towards a platform like ours that allows them not to sell with dignity, take home their earnings, because on our platform we guarantee artisans go home with 90%. No other marketplace provides that level of fairness to artisans. So and a lot of value propositions that we have to offer. So we would love you to come out there, be part of our community, be part of to help us drive towards decentralization, and most importantly, support the small business owners, regardless of what country they might be in, whether it's in Canada, Nigeria, Kenya, and all whatnot.
Awesome. Eric, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Alex.
All right, that's it for today. I'm Alexander Lapa, and I hope you join me again in the next Agents of Nonprofit.